Alright, so I've never reviewed a documentary before, so this is going to be a little interesting because I can't fall back on some of my usual tricks, so this is going to be a little different, I think. So first off, I am a Star Trek fan, and have been for, now I can say, the majority of my life, since junior high, give or take. I got into Star Trek because my best friend was into Star Trek, and it was something, he talked it up to me, got into Next Generation, and then got into Deep Space Nine, and so on and so on and so on. So I've been a Star Trek fan for a very long time, and I am a true fan. All right, I did conventions and shit back in the day. All right, back when it was only Star Trek conventions, back before everything and its brother had a convention, and people laughed at Trekkies because we went to conventions, we went to nerd conventions. Now everything's got it. All right, and I've long known that my favorite Star Trek, by far, by a very wide margin, has been Star Trek Deep Space Nine. More than that, Deep Space Nine is my second favorite TV show ever after Mystery Science Theater 3000. I cannot stress how much I love this show for the writing and the characters and the complex plots, the social elements it touched on, the wider universe that it created. Just everything about Deep Space Nine was so good. And I'd say it didn't have its bad episodes, it did. But taken as a whole, it is one of the most complete shows I've ever seen. But here's the funny thing, is that I watch the show and it just speaks to me. It is that kind of influential. But in the realm of Star Trek, in Star Trek fandom, Deep Space Nine has always been, and they even say it in the documentary, it's the unwanted middle child. It's the show that is always buried amongst the others. It's always taking a back seat to the Next Generation. And it's the show that most hardcore Trek fans hate. And one of the great amusing things, one of the early parts of this documentary is, so the documentary is done by Ira Steven Behr, who was the showrunner and executive producer and one of the head writers on the original, and him kind of going through it all. And one of the first things he has the cast do, he gets like the original cast together, and they're reading like this hate mail from fans about why they hate Deep Space Nine, and they're all just kind of laughing and going, oh wow, really? But yeah, fans, hardcore Trek fans, hated this show because it went against Star Trek. It destroyed Trek. It didn't understand Star Trek. And he says in the documentary that he wanted to make it for the actors because he felt bad for them that they poured all of this time and energy and all of their souls into it, and have the fan base just kind of reject them en masse no matter what they did. He felt really bad. So this documentary is not like a strict making of. It is not going to give you behind the scenes dirt or anything like that. This documentary is a love letter to the cast primarily, and then the other creative forces kind of coming into it. So the whole thing is just unbelievably heartfelt. And speaking as a fan, as a real fan of this show, the whole thing just feels so warm. It feels like it does feel like a validation. You know, that everything you've said about the show for years and all the beliefs you've had about it have been, you know, that you were, not so much that you were right, but that other people felt this way too. So it really does give you a very warm feeling, especially for this show, because of course the original series went on, and it is the institution. Next Generation is the favorite son. You know, it's the one that can do no wrong, and it got movies and everything. And Deep Space Nine just kind of went off the air and didn't get a lot of fanfare afterwards, didn't get, you know, really didn't get much of anything. And it feels so good to kind of come back and see these actors that created these characters and this world and this story that have become so much a part of your life, and kind of give them a last hurrah, a last thank you, and give them a moment to say, boy, you know, it was hard and it was painful, but it was so great. So one of the things about this documentary, which I thought was really cool, is a kind of a neat framing device around it. They didn't want to just do talking heads, which they do a lot, but they wanted to kind of offer something neat. So what the neat framing device is Ira Steven Behr gets all the other writers back together, and they brainstorm the opening episode for a season 8. Now, they're not going to do a season 8, clearly. But they're like, okay, if let's say we got picked up by Netflix or something, and they want us to do, you know, DS9 season 8, and we're picking up, you know, in real time, so it's 20 years later. So what story do we tell and what goes on? So watching them kind of brainstorm this hypothetical what would happen next is just, it's just awesome. It's so cool. It's a great way to kind of bridge the documentary together. And for the hardcore fans, it's fun to go, ooh, oh, now I really want to see that. Oh, shit. Oh, come on. You know. I'm not sure, again, I'm not sure how to review the documentary. I guess asking, you know, did I learn new things? Yes, I did. Here's I guess the best critique I can give. The documentary is like 2 hours long. And they even make a joke about it in the end credits that there's so much more I wanted them to talk about. And they make the joke going, oh, if we did that, it'd be like 8 hours long. And I'm sitting there going, I would have sat there for that. You know, it was wonderful. It touches us on a lot of things that made Deep Space Nine so great. And I guess maybe I'll just talk about that. Maybe this is kind of maybe more of a review of Deep Space Nine than it is the documentary. But, you know, what I love about DS9 is I feel it's the most human of all the shows. A lot of people say it's, you know, it's darker. But I don't believe it's darker. I believe it's more human. Because up until that point, you know, the original series, and especially the Next Generation, this was humanity idealized. And that's what it's supposed to be. That's not a knock against it. I hate when you try and have a conversation and you're saying you like one thing better than the other, so people automatically assume you hate the other. I do not hate Next Generation. Next Generation is awesome. I like Deep Space Nine better. And again, it's because Next Gen, Captain Picard, Riker, Data, Those characters, they are the idealized humanity, what we want to become, what we want to aspire to be. And DS9 is about people as they actually are, flawed, warts and all, people who are trying to be better, but the world they live in doesn't always allow you to be a perfect, angelic, blameless human being. That we all make compromises. We all make justifications to ourselves for compromises. And the ugliness of the world around us will infect us and test our faith and test our most deeply held beliefs. And can we come through it and still call ourselves good people? So many things about Deep Space Nine and so many of the characters are compromised characters. All of the characters in Deep Space Nine are broken. They are not the idealized people. They are broken people who are trying to piece themselves back together. I mean, our main character, Captain Sisko, is a widower who is dealing with the pain of losing his wife, 5-6 years on, and is trying to fill that hole. His first officer is a terrorist. All right? Chief O'Brien is a grizzled soldier who's more than a little prejudiced. All of the characters are broken and compromised, but they are trying to be the best parts of themselves with all of the problems and all of the issues of the world around them constantly putting them under pressure. And that's what's so great about it. Deep Space Nine, Trek has always handled social issues and has always handled them in brilliant ways. But again, I think the difference between Trek of before DS9 and Trek of DS9 is that all the other Treks handle it in kind of a hovering above the situation. The bad guy or the person with the wrong belief is the other person, is that person over there. And I, the evolved human, can kind of look down on them in a way and say, this is why this is wrong. DS9 says, no, that wrong person, that's the person sitting next to you. That's the person you know. And you can't just shove them aside or look down on them. You need to understand why they are the way they are. They're one of the original primary antagonists of DS9, the Cardassians, are the fucking Nazis. I mean, they're space Nazis. They're a militarized culture that swoops in. They occupied a peaceful planet, put the residents in concentration camps, and it's not just a thing of those are our evil villains. It's okay, how the fuck do they tick? Why are they like this? And why would a culture go along with this? And through characters like Gul Dukat and Garrick, we understand why they would follow this ideology. You learn about the other characters and thus learn about yourself. Not to sound too hippy-dippy, but that's the truth. And they do a great bit in this documentary about all of the social issues that Deep Space Nine tackled, and not from a perched on, their high horse, but right down there in the dirt. They talked about war. And not just about war, but about what it does to a person, the compromises you make in war, the after effects of war. They do a great bit. One of the episodes, It's Only a Paper Moon, where Nog is in the war and he loses his leg, and him dealing with that truth. Not just that his life is different, but just he was brutally attacked and suffered, and he's going to be suffering for the rest of his life. And the actor who played Nog says he's contacted by veterans still that say that episode helped me. That episode showed me someone was going through what I went through. This episode is it, and they say in the documentary, it doesn't get the credit it deserves for being a black show. Being a show with a black main actor, with black actors dealing with, though doing it in a science fiction way, dealing with the contemporary issues. One of the greatest episodes of this series, of Star Trek period, Far Beyond the Stars, where it deals with that concept of racism in America. Next Gen never did that. Racism was always how are those aliens over there? Look how racist they are towards one another. Oh my God. Or boy, the Romulans sure do hate us because we're human. If only we could show them that we're all the same. It didn't deal with it with, Geordi being the victim of racism on the ship or something like that. DS9 was not afraid to roll up its sleeves and go, we're getting down there in the muck. And we're going to shovel it right in your face. They talked about terrorism. They talked about religion. They talked about sexual identity. They do a neat bit in this where they talk about the political things they talked about. They do sexual identity, and he says, take the check off of that. Ira Bear takes the check off of that. Says, why? He said, we did one episode in 7 years. We could have done better. And that is true. But here's the thing. I think that statement is misleading, because you got to remember this was back in the mid to late 90s. All right. And while gay culture was definitely more prominent than it had been up until that point, it was still that thing over there, that new thing that's popping up. It still had the stigma of AIDS attached to it. People didn't get it. And I think that they did the one episode and did it as good as they did. I think for the time period that was still revolutionary. I don't think they need to feel bad about that. I could talk on and on and on about Deep Space Nine and why I love it so much. And I think that's one of the reasons I love this documentary, is it loves it so much, and showing other people who love it so much. And it's cliche, but I love all the clips and things that they show from fans, young and old, who are commenting on it and why it stuck out to them. They have a priest in there talking about how he respects how well they handled the discussions of religion. You've got a little girl who's talking to him about how much she loves Major Kira. And women talking about how great the show was in its representation of women and other races and whatnot. And it's I'm gushing a bit, but I think if you're a fan like me, if you're a Star Trek fan and you're a Deep Space Nine fan especially, you need to check this out. They only did a one-day showing of it, but apparently they are going to release it on DVD in June, I think, so you can get a hold of it. But it is a great documentary. It is a heartfelt documentary. And yeah, maybe it's not a documentary about, a war or something that's more important, but it's about a show that was truly, and it's again a cliche to say, truly ahead of its time. And and how it's finally getting some of the recognition that it deserves for being as good as it is. And I truly hope that is true. I hope that people are rediscovering this show. If you're watching this and you've never watched Deep Space Nine, go watch it. I'll tell you, the first season's hard to get into, I'm not going to lie, but it's got some amazing episodes, and second, third season hits its stride, and it's off to the races, baby. You'll be hooked. Give it a watch, and watch this documentary, because it is from an artistic standpoint, it's one of those things that you love seeing, of a group of actors or writers and everything who just said, boy, I sure was proud of that thing we did. And clearly not famous or anything like that, but as an artistic person, as somebody who directs and has written and has acted and all that, I recognize that feeling, and I see it in the people here of just how much that project meant to them, and how much it's meant to so many people, including myself. So I loved this documentary. I loved everything about it. My only critique is, honestly, I wish it was longer. I'm going to buy the DVD. I hope they have all the deleted things in it, because I want to watch it all. It's phenomenal. It's everything I wanted it to be. So I'm really glad I watched it. I don't know if I can give an A or a grade for it, but if I did, I'd give it an A+. It's a fantastic viewing experience, and it's very positive. It addresses the issues. It addresses some of the more difficult things, but does it in kind of a, yeah, all right, yeah, we were pissed about that, but we're fine now. I guess it's kind of the thing that time will do. But the title of it is What We Left Behind, which is a play on the final episode of the series, which is What You Leave Behind, and I believe that it should be the desire of every artist to leave behind something this fucking good. To leave behind something as fucking good as Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Man, what that would be like. What that would be like. I guess that's what I'm always aiming for. I wanna, in my own small way, I want to leave behind something that good. Or maybe even more to the point, something that had that much of an effect, a positive effect on so many people. What that must feel like. Wow. So yeah, I don't think this was a great review, because it's hard to review a documentary. But I wanted to talk about the movie, because I talk about movies, it's what I do, and it gives me a chance to talk about one of my all-time favorite shows. So, double win. So, yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much all I've got to say on this one. That's my Forrest Gump impression. That's all I've got to say about that. Actually, it's not all I've got to say about that. Again, I could talk for hours and hours on Deep Space Nine, but you'd get bored. Go watch this documentary instead. So, thanks for joining me, and as always, drive safe, and I'll see you at the movies, and live long and prosper.